So what do we have in here?
This is the gold Reliquary.
And what are you doing to it now in this stage of the conservation process?
What I'm doing right now is we're not really sure if it's rock crystal or if it's glass, but either way I'm going to treat it as glass, be a lot more conservative. And what I'm doing right now is trying to get some of the salt out, because as I'm working on it, occasionally it has to be exposed to air, and I want to make sure I have all the salt out, because if it is glass, you can't let it dry out at all. The salt will crystallize and it will damage the glass. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the salt out by something called freshwater transition. It creates kind of a pressure difference. It's called osmotic pressure. You put it in fresh water and it wants to pull the salt water out. But in this case, you don't want to do it. You don't want to put it right in fresh water. It'll be too much osmotic pressure. So you want to step it down 90%, 80%, 70%. Right now it's in a mixture of 90% salt water, 10% distilled water. And each week I'll step it down 10%. Eventually I'll get down, in about 10 weeks I'll be down to distilled water. And then I'll probably keep it in distilled water for about 4 weeks. And then I'll start testing it, make sure all the chlorides are out. So that's what I'm doing right now. The reason it's moving is when you do freshwater transition, it's always better to have the water moving over the artifact. You don't want to have it in just sitting there without any moving water, because what will happen is the salt will come out and kind of sit in a pocket around the artifact. So it's still sort of sitting in salt water. If the water is moving over it, it's going to pull the chlorides out much faster.
So this whole process will probably take a few months then to actually...
Absolutely. That's just to get it to the point where I can start taking it out and working on it, because what we're going to have to do is there's a gold retaining ring, and they put the two lenses into the gold piece and have a gold retaining ring holding it in place. The problem is, in order to do conservation on the inside, I have to get that gold retaining ring off. So but before I do that though, get some of the salt out, because you're probably going to have to take it out of the water to really start working on it.
Yeah.
We may even have to send it to a jeweler. They press that retaining ring in, it's tight. I've spent countless hours so far trying to loosen it, and it is really tight. They maybe even tapped it in with a hammer, crimped it a little bit, whatever. So we may have to send it to a jeweler or a goldsmith and have them try to get that retaining ring off so I can get inside. But first, I want to get as much salt out as I can, because if they have to take it out in the air, I don't want any salt in the glass or crystal, whichever it is.
Well, it sounds like we'll have a lot more to talk about as we move along in this process. Thank you very much for the explanation, and we'll come back and talk to you again in the next phase of the conservation.
It's still a work in progress.
Yes. Thank you, John.
Okay.